I am 79 years old. I have spent 51 years in a laboratory. I have published over 200 research papers. I have trained hundreds of students. I have stood in front of governments and told them what science says. And I have never, not once, told them the full truth. Not because I didn't know it. I knew it for decades. I am telling you now because I am running out of time, and because staying silent any longer would be the worst thing I ever did. My name doesn't matter. My titles don't matter. What matters is this: I watched the world move in the wrong direction. And I had the data. I had the proof. I had everything needed to change the conversation. But I said nothing. I told myself it wasn't the right moment. I told myself the world wasn't ready. I told myself that someone else would speak up, someone braver, someone with less to lose, that someone never came. Every morning I wake up and I think about the young scientists I trained. Brilliant minds, full of fire, full of questions. And I remember the exact moment in each of them when the fire went out. Not because they failed, because I taught them how to survive the system instead of how to challenge it. I thought I had time to fix that. I was wrong. There is a version of science the public sees, clean, hopeful, moving forward. And then there is the version those of us inside the rooms know, the version where findings get buried, where careers get ended for asking certain questions, where the most important truths sit in drawers, unpublished, unfunded, ignored, because they are inconvenient for the people writing the checks. I lived in that version for 51 years. I mastered it. And that, more than anything I ever discovered in a laboratory, is what I regret. I thought I was being strategic, patient, professional. I was wrong. I was being afraid. And fear dressed in professional language is still fear. I am 79 years old. My hands shake when I write now. My memory slips in the evenings. Time does not negotiate. So I am telling you what I should have said 30 years ago. Not for my reputation. That is already behind me. For yours, because you are still in it. You still have time. And I need you to understand what happens when you spend a lifetime waiting for the perfect moment to be honest. Later never came. I was 28 when I first understood what I had found. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had skipped lunch. I was sitting in a cold laboratory in a building that smelled like old paper and chemical solvent. And I was looking at data that didn't match what I was supposed to find. In science, that moment, when the numbers don't behave, is either a mistake or a discovery. This was not a mistake. I ran the test again, then 11 more times across 3 months. Every time the same result, clear, undeniable, pointing in a direction that nobody in my field was ready to look. I was excited. I was terrified. I was 28 years old, and I thought I had just found something that would change things. I went to my supervisor. He looked at my data for a long time. He didn't say anything for several minutes. Then he closed the folder, pushed it back across the table toward me, and said 4 words I never forgot. "Leave this alone, son." I didn't understand then what those 4 words really meant. I thought he was protecting the integrity of the research process. I thought he was being careful, scientific, measured. I understand now what he was really saying. He was telling me how the world actually works, not the world in the textbooks, not the world in the acceptance speeches at research awards. The real world, the one where certain truths are allowed to exist and certain truths are not. And the difference between the two has nothing to do with evidence. It has everything to do with money, with power, with who funds the research and who needs the results to say a particular thing. I was 28. I put the folder in my desk drawer. I told myself, later. I will come back to this later. The years moved fast after that. I built a career, a real one. Grants, publications, conferences in cities I had only read about, my name on papers that other scientists cited, students who looked at me the way I once looked at my own mentors. I had a family, 2 daughters, a wife who believed in the work even when I came home hollow-eyed and distant. She used to say that I carried the laboratory home with me in my silence. She was right, but she didn't know what I was actually carrying. On the outside, everything looked like success, and in many ways it was, but there was always that drawer, not literally. Over the years, it became many drawers, many folders, many moments where I looked at something true and chose the safer path, where I softened a conclusion, where I omitted a finding, where I reviewed a colleague's paper and approved it even though I knew it was incomplete in ways that mattered. I told myself I was maintaining relationships, being collegial, playing the long game. I was just afraid. The hardest part is not what I hid from the world. The hardest part is what I hid from myself. I convinced myself that I was still the young man in that cold laboratory, still looking, still searching, still committed to the truth. But that young man would not have recognized who I became. He would have looked at me, at my awards, at my title, at my careful, measured language, and he would have felt something close to grief. I know this because I feel it now. Every morning when I wake up, every time I look at a young scientist full of fire and I see the moment coming, the moment the system will ask them to choose, and I say nothing. I thought I had time to go back and fix it. I was wrong. The data I buried at 28 is still buried, and the world kept moving without it. It happened on a Thursday evening in November. I was 67 years old, semi-retired, still consulting, still occasionally reviewing papers, still telling myself I was contributing something meaningful. My wife and I had just finished dinner. The kitchen was warm. The news was on in the other room, and my younger daughter called. She was a scientist too. I had watched her become one with a pride so deep it was almost painful. She had her mother's stubbornness and my curiosity and something neither of us ever had, a kind of moral clarity that made her uncomfortable to be around sometimes. She had found something, not unlike what I had found at 28. Different field, different data, same shape of truth. And she was calling to tell me that her department head had asked her to revise her conclusions, to soften the language, to reframe the findings in a way that would not create problems for the institution's largest funding partner. She was calling because she didn't know what to do. And she was calling me, her father, because she assumed I would tell her to fight. I sat at that kitchen table for a long time before I said anything. My wife was watching me from across the room. She knew something was happening. She always knew. And I thought about being 28. I thought about that cold laboratory. I thought about the folder in the drawer. I thought about every moment across 4 decades where I had chosen comfort over honesty and called it strategy. And I told my daughter to comply. I told her to revise the conclusions. I told her the funding relationship was important, that she was early in her career, that there would be other opportunities to publish the full picture, that patience was a form of wisdom. I used every word I had ever used on myself. She went quiet on the phone, not an angry quiet, something worse, a disappointed quiet, the kind that doesn't argue back because it has already understood something and the understanding is final. She said, "Okay, Dad," and she hung up. My wife asked me what happened. I told her it was a work question, nothing serious. I went to bed. I lay in the dark for 4 hours and I did not sleep. Because somewhere in that phone call, in the silence after my daughter said okay, something cracked open inside me, something that had been sealed shut for 40 years. I had spent my entire career protecting the system that had silenced me. I had become my supervisor. I had looked at my daughter, sitting in her own cold laboratory with her own true data, and I had pushed the folder back across the table. I had said 4 words with different language. "Leave this alone, son." I got up at 3 in the morning. I sat in my study. I looked at the bookshelves filled with my published work. 40 years of careful language, 40 years of approved conclusions, 40 years of science that was true enough to be published and incomplete enough to be safe. And I understood, for the first time, without any defense, without any justification, without the comfortable language of strategy and patience and timing, what I had actually done with my life. I had not been a scientist. I had been a manager of inconvenient truths. That night broke something in me, but breaking is not always destruction. Sometimes breaking is the first honest thing that has happened in a very long time. I called my daughter the next morning. I told her not to revise anything. I told her I would explain why. And for the first time in 40 years, I opened the drawer, not metaphorically. I went to my study. I found the original files, the data from 1974, the tests I had run 13 times, the findings I had buried at 28 because a man I respected told me to leave it alone. I sat with it for a long time, and then I started writing, not a paper, not a review. The truth, all of it, in plain language, without softening, without strategy, without one eye on the funding committee and one eye on the findings. I thought I had time to do this when I was younger. Later never came, but it was not too late. Not yet. Let me tell you what I actually learned in 51 years of science. Not the science. The lesson underneath the science. The one that has nothing to do with laboratories or data or research papers. The one that applies to your life, whether you have ever held a microscope or not. Here it is. The most dangerous thing a human being can do is know the truth and wait for a better time to live by it. That is it. That is everything. We tell ourselves a story. The story goes like this. I know what is right. I know what is true. I know what I should do. But right now the timing is wrong. Right now I have too much to lose. Right now the conditions are not ready. I will wait. I will be patient. I will find the right moment. And the story sounds reasonable. It sounds like wisdom. It sounds like the kind of thing a mature, experienced, thoughtful person says. But it is not wisdom. It is a very elegant way of being a coward. I know because I told myself that story for 40 years. And I was good at it. I had the vocabulary of a scientist. I could make fear sound like methodology. I could make silence sound like strategy. I could make cowardice sound like patience. But the result was the same. The truth stayed in the drawer. Here is what nobody tells you about waiting. Waiting does not preserve your courage for later. It spends it. Every time you know something true and choose not to act on it, every time you see something wrong and decide this is not the right moment, you are not saving your integrity for a better opportunity. You are eroding it, quietly, slowly, in ways you cannot see day to day. Until one day you sit in a study at 3 in the morning and you look at a shelf full of careful, safe-approved work and you realize that the person who did all of that is not who you thought you were. I was wrong about time. I was wrong about patience. I was wrong about strategy. And I was wrong in a way that cannot be undone. People think that silence is neutral. It is not. Silence is a choice. And like all choices, it has consequences. It shapes things. It allows things. It gives permission to things that should never have been permitted. My silence across 4 decades did not protect anyone. It protected a system that was already protecting itself very well without my help. The only thing my silence harmed was the truth. And the young scientists who came after me, who needed someone to show them that honesty was survivable, who needed one person in a position of authority to say this is wrong and I will say so, those people never got that from me. I gave them career advice instead. I taught them how to last, not how to matter. This is the false belief I carried for 50 years. That survival is the same as integrity. It is not. Surviving a corrupt system by learning its rules is not integrity. It is adaptation. And there is nothing wrong with adaptation. It keeps you alive. It keeps your family fed. I understand it. I lived it. But do not call it integrity. Do not look at yourself in the mirror after 40 years of careful silence and tell yourself you were being wise. Call it what it was. And then, if there is still time, do something different. The truth I buried at 28 was about science, but the lesson it taught me at 67 was about life. Every person reading this right now has a drawer. You know what is in it. Maybe it is a relationship you have stayed in because leaving felt too complicated. Maybe it is work you stopped believing in but kept doing because the income felt too important. Maybe it is something you know is wrong in your home, in your community, in your own behavior, that you have been meaning to address when the time is right. The time is never right. That is the secret nobody tells you. The perfect moment, to be honest, does not arrive on its own. You have to create it. And the cost of creating it feels very high in the moment. I know this. I lived this. The cost feels like risk, like exposure, like loss. But the cost of not creating it, the cost of choosing the draw again and again across years and decades, that cost is not paid in one moment. It is paid in the slow, quiet erosion of who you actually are. I am 79 years old. I have won awards I do not deserve and stayed silent on truths I should have spoken and trained students I should have protected and built a career I should have risked more aggressively. And I would trade every award, every title, every published paper, for one thing, for the version of my life where I was 28 years old in that cold laboratory, and I looked at that data and I walked back into my supervisor's office and I said, "No, this matters. I will not leave this alone." That version of me would have lost things. I know that. but he would have kept himself, and that, I understand now, too late and too clearly, is the only thing worth keeping. I am talking to you now, not to the world, not to science, not to institutions or governments or funding committees, to you, the person watching this at whatever hour it is where you are, whatever you are carrying, whatever drawer you have been avoiding, whatever truth you have been saving for a better moment that has not arrived yet and will not arrive on its own. I am talking to you. And I need you to hear this as if it is coming from someone who has already lived the version of your life where you keep waiting. Because it is. You think you have time. I thought I had time. I was 28 and I thought I had time. Then I was 35 and I thought I had time. Then I was 47 and I thought I had time. Then I was 58 and I thought I had time. Then I was 67, sitting at a kitchen table, listening to my daughter's silence on the phone, and I understood, with a clarity that felt like cold water, that time had been leaving the whole while I was waiting for it to arrive. It does not wait for you. It never did. I want to tell you something about regret. People talk about regret like it is an emotion, like it is something you feel the way you feel sadness or anger, something that comes and then passes. It is not like that. Real regret, the kind that comes from decades of chosen silence, is not an emotion. It is a condition. It lives in you permanently. It sits behind every good moment. It colors everything. Your proudest achievements, your quietest evenings, the faces of the people you love. It does not shout. It does not demand attention. It simply exists, underneath everything, always. I would not wish it on anyone. And yet I see it coming for so many people. People who are still young enough to choose differently. People who are still in the middle of their story. People who still have the chance I did not take. So I am asking you, not as a scientist, not as someone with titles or publications or credentials, as a 79-year-old man who is running out of mornings, I am asking you this. What do you know that you are not saying? What do you see that you are pretending not to see? What have you been saving for later? Because later is not a place you arrive at. Later never came for me, and I was careful. I was patient. I was strategic. I did everything right by the rules of a system that was never designed to reward honesty. And I am sitting here now with shaking hands and a shelf full of careful work and a phone call I cannot take back, and a daughter who said, "Okay, Dad," in a voice I will hear for the rest of my life. Don't make my mistake. The world does not need more people who know the truth and manage it carefully. The world has enough of those. The world needs people who know the truth and cannot stay quiet about it. People for whom silence is physically uncomfortable. People who look at a drawer full of inconvenient findings and feel something closer to duty than to fear. You may be one of those people. You may have been one of those people before the system taught you to be careful. Before your first supervisor pushed the folder back across the table. Before someone you respected told you to leave it alone. Before you learned that survival and integrity were two different things and made your choice without fully understanding what you were choosing. It is not too late. I need you to understand that. Even if you have been quiet for years, even if you have been careful for decades, even if you have a drawer so full it frightens you to think about opening it, it is not too late to open it. It is not too late to be the person you were before you learned to be afraid. My daughter revised her conclusions that day, but 3 weeks after I called her back, after I told her everything, after I opened my own drawer after 40 years, she resubmitted the full findings. Unrevised, unchanged. True, she lost that funding relationship. She's still working. She's still a scientist. And for the first time in a very long time, when I look at her, I do not feel grief. I feel something I had almost forgotten the weight of. I am 79 years old. My time is mostly behind me, but yours is mostly ahead. Do not spend it managing the distance between who you are and who you know you should be. That distance does not shrink on its own. It grows quietly, daily, in choices so small they barely feel like choices at all. Until one day it is 3 in the morning and you are sitting in a room full of everything you built and you are trying to remember the last time you did something that the 28-year-old version of you would have been proud of. I thought I had time. I was wrong. Later never came. Don't make my mistake.